Welcome, yogis, and thank you for joining me for Build Core Strength number 3. So in the last practice, we looked at balancing the strength of the inner thighs and the abductors, as well as, the core, to create stability in the hip joints, pelvis, low back. And in this class, we'll focus more on balancing the strength of the hip flexors and the glutes. So we'll be working more kind of front and back body. You'll want to have a block and a strap. Let's go ahead and come down onto the back and get started in conscious resting pose. So the knees are bent, soles of the feet hip width apart, arms alongside your body. Relax your belly. Relax your face. And just observe the movement of your diaphragm descending on the inhale and lifting back up into the basket of the rib cage on the exhale. And begin to participate in your breath, adding more volume to it so that the belly will fill and the bottom of the rib cage will open before everything hugs back in on the exhale. So there's movement in the belly, sides of the waist, and there's also movement in the rib cage. Relax your shoulders and your neck. And see if you can sense the subtle distension of the pelvic floor on the inhale, right there at the top of the in-breath. And then the way it almost chases the breath out of the body on the exhale, very subtle. And then take your hands right into the creases of your hips, right at the root of the thigh bones, and just push the thigh bones down away from your face, like you're trying to create maximum space there. Good. And float your knees over your hips, and you'll take your right hand on top of your knee, and you'll take, below your knee, so your right hand's on the shin, and the left hand is on top of the knee on the quad. And your left hand is going to push, and your right hand is going to pull, but the legs are resisting you here. And just feel that for a moment. Really asymmetrical movement. And then you'll switch. So the right hand will come just above the knee on the quads. The left hand will go below the knee. And the right hand is pushing, and the left hand is pulling. And you can notice if one feels stronger than the other. Good job. And then relax. So from here, go ahead and grab your strap and let's loop it up around the sole of the right foot. Left knee can stay bent, or you're welcome to stretch your left leg out long. And then allow the leg to open to the right. So we're just doing a little bit of stretching here before we jump into more of the strength work. But in fact, to stretch the places that often need it the most requires oftentimes stabilizing the areas that are more mobile. And then you'll come back through center, draw the leg just a few inches across the body, to work into the lateral hip and thigh, just for a breath or two. Beautiful. And release. And we'll go to the second side, stretching the left leg up. Right leg can go long. And then allow the leg to open out to the left, keeping the right side of your pelvis weighted and keeping your left outer hip wrapping underneath you as if the left sit bone was reaching for the right heel so that your hip isn't hiking up. Come back through center. You'll transfer the strap into the right hand and just draw the leg across the body a few degrees. Good. And then you'll come back through center. Grab a hold of your block and you'll place it on its thinnest level between the inner thighs and peel yourself up into a bridge pose. Inner edges of the feet roughly parallel. And when you squeeze the block almost with the intention of as if you were trying to dispense it down to the floor, the inner thighs rolling in, you may feel how that releases some of the clenching around the sacrum. Walk the feet in as close as you can while you still have the block in place. And this is plenty. You can stay right here. Or if you're interested in a challenge, you can stretch your right leg out long, but you keep the two sides of the pelvis level. So this will probably bring some vivid awareness into your left hamstrings and glutes. Tailbone lengthening towards the block, just gently. And then you'll set the right foot down, keep the hips level, and stretch your left leg out, squeezing the block that's between the thighs and keeping the pelvis level. And also keeping the sides of the waist long. So notice if one hip is trying to buddy up with the armpit. And then set the leg down and the hips down. And turn your block to its medium height. And we're going to take the legs up overhead. Now, if you have super duper tight hamstrings, this is really a challenge. You don't really want your low back to kind of flatten out and everything harden against the floor when you bring the legs up, although we are going to come into a C curve in a moment. But bend the knees as much as you need to so the weight is in the sacrum. Inhale, lift your head, neck, and shoulders off the mat. And now on your exhale, squeeze your block, draw the belly towards the spine, and lift the hips just 1/2 inch. And then inhale, set the pelvis down, but the head stays lifted. Exhale, squeeze the block, lift the hips. Inhale, set the hips down. Exhale, squeeze the block, lift the hips, rest the head in the hands. Inhale, set the hips down. We're going to do 3 more. Exhale, squeeze and lift. Inhale, set it down. Exhale, squeeze and lift. And 1 more. Exhale, squeeze and lift. Beautiful. And come on down. From here, hug your knees in towards your chest. Take your arms to a T or to a cactus and just let the knees move to the left. Right shoulder stays down. The gaze is up, and maybe the gaze even turns to the right. Come back through center and let the knees drop off to the right, and the gaze can come to the left. Good. Come back through center and place your feet on the floor. So we're going to graduate from what we did in Build Core Strength number 1, where we were actually kind of flattening the spine out. What I'd like you to do is, here in Conscious Resting Pose, take a deep breath in, and then on your exhale, feel what it takes to flatten your low back against the mat. So your tailbone will lift up and you lose that natural curve in your lumbar spine, which is not something that we want to lose. And now relax that. And what I'd like you to do is take your fingers underneath you, just slide them underneath there. Take a deep breath in, and then exhale just lightly, very lightly, just press down into the tops of the fingers. So you feel more of a cinching in around the whole waist. You could even do a fake cough, and it's sort of like a 10% of that. Okay, now imagine your fingers were there underneath your back the whole time. I mean, if your shoulders are really open and you wanted to do that, you could. And you're going to float your knees up over your hips. And nothing is going to change in your spine. But from here, the knee doesn't move, but the hip joint moves. So the right heel taps and it comes back up. Now the left heel taps and it comes back up. The right heel taps and it comes back up. And the left heel taps and it comes back up. Right heel, left heel. Now add the arms. Right heel, left arm. Left heel, right arm, cinching in around the waist. Right heel, left arm. Left heel, right arm. One more set. Right heel, left arm. Left heel, right arm. Good. And relax. Grab a hold of your block, and you can place it on its lowest or medium height underneath your sacrum. And then float your knees over your hips. And it's the same feeling that you just had. And now, instead of tapping your left heel to the floor, stretch the leg out long without changing the position in your spine, and just lift and lower it a few times. So I'm using tons of core strength here to isolate this in my hip joint. And now relax. You can hold the right thigh, and there will probably be a little bit of movement depending on how much hip extension you have as you come into your stretch. Good. And the medium height might be too much, so lower height is great. Now, bring the knees back loosely over the hips Cinch in around your waist, just like you did when you were lightly pressing into the fingers. You can even touch the whole tube of your core. And then stretch the right leg out. If this is too much, just ignore me. And at the end range of motion, there should be zero pain, nothing even resembling stress in the lower back. You're going to lift and lower that extended leg, but keeping your pelvis and spine neutral. Beautiful. And then hold the left thigh and you can relax. Good. Bring your feet down and you'll hug your knees into your chest, and you can stay here in this squat on the back, or you can press back into a momentary child's pose. Good. Now we'll come up onto the hands and knees, and if bearing weight doesn't work for you on the hands or the knees today, repeat what we were, that's the bad news, repeat what we were just doing on the back with the toe taps without the block underneath you. But those of you in table, same feeling, cinching in around the waist like when you had your fingertips underneath your back. You're going to stretch your right leg out, and without changing the position of the pelvis spine, you're going to lift from the right inner thigh until the hip reaches hip height. If you lift the leg much higher, you're going to come into a back bend. So try that. And notice if you're bearing weight all in the wrist. See if you can shift the weight forward. You can press your knuckles down, even claw the mat a little bit with the fingertips. And if you want, you can stretch your left arm forward, keeping the spine stable. Good. And then switch. Finding that neutral spine. Nothing's going to change in the spine. You're cinching in around the waist, lifting the leg up to hip height. Your right toes can be curled underneath or flat. Left inner thigh reaching towards the ceiling, and then if you like, adding the right arm. Beautiful. Bring the right hand down, bring the left knee down, and come all the way down onto your belly. You'll reach your arms forward, legs long, forehead down, and you'll press the top of your pubis bone into the mat so you feel that same cinching in action around the core here, now even in this belly down position. So the navel lifts off the mat. The glutes are lightly toning, and the spine is in a really long shape. And now on your inhale, lift your left leg and your right arm and your gaze, gazing down at the cheeks, but without lifting the left hip point off the mat. And exhale, lower. Inhale, right leg, left arm, and exhale, lower. Actually, let's isolate this. So keep your forehead down, keep your hands down, and simply see if you can lift one leg and the other without moving the pelvis. And see if you can get your hamstrings and glutes to fire before your low back muscles. And in order to do that, you have to really recruit the belly. So see if you can tune into the area right around your sitting bone and the backs of your thighs, that there's strength to lift the leg without the low back muscles getting really hard. And then you can come back to the alternating arms and legs. It doesn't need to be a big movement. What we're looking for is incredible mindfulness in your movements. I think in Build Core Strength 1, we might have done a little swimming, same idea. We're going to be heading shortly into downward dog, but if you want to take a little rest stop in child's pose, go for it. Wonderful. And then you'll come on up, and I know I'm not with you in the room, but I still know you're doing a good job. So good job. This is where you'll want to have your chair handy, but not quite yet. Okay. So bring your feet hip width apart and bend your knees. Press down into your feet and imagine you are dragging them along the floor towards the edges of your mat. You can lightly lift your pubis bones. You feel the belly, but you also feel the glutes a little bit here. And now shift the weight over onto your left foot and lift the right knee into the chest with minimal wobbling in this knee. You'll shift over onto the right foot. Keep the knee, ankle stable, and you'll lift the left knee. One more time, each side switch. And switch. Good. And then come up to standing. Okay, now a little bit different, variations on a theme. Bend the knees, sit down, switch over to your left foot, and see if you can keep this whole kinetic chain of the leg nice and stable, and you'll sneak your right leg back and forward. Back and forward. Back and forward. Seeing if you can really talk to these left glutes. And obviously I realize your quads are really talking to you. One more. And then rise back up. Oh my goodness. Bend your knees. Sit down, shift the weight to the right foot. Back and forward. Back and forward. Back. And you could, if, Utkatasana is difficult for your knees because it certainly loads a ton into the knees, just take a micro bend. If you want a real challenge, you can really sit into it. Good. And then come on up. Grab a hold of your chair if you're using it. And turn it so that the back of the chair faces you. And let's come into downward facing dog. Take your feet as wide as the mat and just give yourself a really generous back body stretch here. The knees can be bent. The sit bones are lifting and you're looking for maximum length through the spine. Maybe you play with straightening the legs a little or a lot, but that's not even the point. Good. And then from here, walk it in. And now we'll take Ardha Uttanasana. So the feet will be hip width apart or together. We don't walk them back quite as far. Bend the knees as much as you need to. Reach the heart forward. Again, you want to find as much length in the spine as you can. And then maybe you straighten the legs a little or a lot, but the spine is staying neutral. Good. And walk it in. Okay. Keep your right toes between the chair and step your left leg back. This is similar to what we were doing on the back. Bend your right knee. And this is crescent lunge. And remember the fingertips underneath your back. We're looking for that feeling here. You can bend the back knee if that feels okay to you and lift the pubis bone up. Get that feeling of cinching in around the waist. Re-extend the back leg. And just notice that when you use your core, you get a deeper opening through the back leg. If your balance feels strong today and you want to reach the arms up, fantastic. Pushing into the right heel, staying connected to those right glutes. And then hands to the chair, step the left foot up to meet the right, and we'll switch sides. I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. This is challenging work. So hips square to the front, and you may already be able to access the feeling of cinching in around the waist. If your hip flexors are really tight, you may want to bend the back knee, and that'll put a little slack on them so you can bring the pelvis to a more neutral position and just straighten as much as you can. So to truly open our hips, we need to learn how to stabilize our core, our center, our spine. Otherwise, the low back will volunteer every time. Deep breath in, and then exhale. Bring your foot in, and we'll take one final downward facing dog here. Good. Walk yourself in, turn the chair around to face you, and come into Tadasana. Same action in the core. Without really changing anything, just lift your right leg up onto the chair. And let's stretch both arms up. We haven't done much twisting in this class, but we're going to begin to turn, 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 and open the arms into revolved Utthita Hasta. And it's harder to feel here, but it's still the same action in the core, like when you had those fingertips underneath your lower back. Beautiful. Reach the arms back up and release. Second side. Moving from the left hip, left foot to the chair, reach the arms up, turn, turn, turn along a long axis, and you'll open the arms out. Good. Look forward and unwind, and you can set the chair to the side. And come on down. Take your right ankle onto your left knee and reach through for the left thigh or shin. Coming into reclining pigeon. Know that you can always adapt these practices to make them work for you. And then cactus the arms, and you're welcome here to come into the twist if you'd rather stay in reclining pigeon, that's great too. Good. And come back through center, and we'll switch. Reaching through for the right thigh or shin. And then allowing the shape of the lower body to drop off to the right. Coming back through center, finding your way into happy baby. And then settling into your final rest, whatever that means for you today. If you want to take legs up the wall, or if you just want to stretch out into Shavasana. So Buckminster Fuller, who was an architect among many things, coined the term tensegrity with the idea that any architectural structure, including our human bodies, are made of compressive members, in our case our bones, held in place by tensional members, all the soft tissue inside of us. And that allows both for movement and for stability. And so much of what we're doing here is working to create balance within those tensions to find a place of optimum well-being. And I think this is so much of what life is. We're suspended between birth and death. And in each of the days in between oftentimes many different competing roles and interests, but somehow within that web of tension, we find a very vibrant life. Hug your knees into your chest, roll over onto your side, and make your way up into a seated position. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. Great job, and namaste.